This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation.
We are in the situation that we're in because we're largely not effective enough in those two areas. Negative plays on offense and not finishing off drives, and then defensively giving up the explosive play. Our team's got to make a decision, how they move forward.
The Tigers return home hosting the Vanderbilt Commodores for the first time since 2009. Coming up, Coach Kelly discusses this week's preparation and practice. But first, from the Capital One Studios, inside legendary Tiger Stadium, here are your hosts, former Tiger Gordy Rush, and the voice of your Fighting Tigers, Chris Blair.
Good Monday morning, Tiger fans. Welcome in to another week of LSU Fighting Tiger football. Starts this week, obviously, on Monday with the Brian Kelly Press Conference. We'll go to football operations coming up at the top of the hour, and Coach Brian Kelly will discuss this past Saturday and look ahead to the matchup as the Tigers do return home to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores coming up on Saturday night in Death Valley. Welcome in, and Gordy Rush, never one of my favorite trips to Gainesville, Florida. I think most people understand that through the 9 years that I've been here. But I got to tell you, this one was the toughest one I've been a part of. 2018 was tough the way that game finished, but this one still quite the head scratcher. And I know it's been talked about a bunch since Saturday night, all yesterday, and continues today. The stat book. It's hard to explain how the Tigers lose by 11 when they dominated time of possession. They were excellent on third down. Again, out first down the Florida Gators, and yet came up short on the scoreboard. It was a tough afternoon and evening. And with 2 games left, the Tigers got to regroup. They finished with Vanderbilt and Oklahoma here at home. But, again, it will be quite a job for this coaching staff to keep everybody locked in, keep them focused. And at this point, I know there is bowl opportunities, but with a 12-team playoff, I think now you're talking about playing for pride and individual pride as well as team pride.
Yeah, look, I think the most disappointing part of last week was that everything was still – there's a lot of good stuff in front of you if you win that football game and you get to come home and you got 2 games at home against, formidable teams, Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. They're not – Vanderbilt's having a great year. Oklahoma's obviously – having a disappointing season. But when the adversity hit and in the second half again, as Coach talked about, it was the negative plays on offense, 7 sacks, which is unbelievable to give up 7 sacks. This Florida defense that really was an attacking blitzing defense that had really struggled and were short 5 starters due to injury. And to give up those negative plays. And then again, in the red zone where you're settling for field goals, you're off the field in the first quarter on a 4th and 1, you don't convert, you miss a field goal, you settle for field goals, that much time of possession, you've got to do better than 16 points.
Absolutely. Again, when you look at where the Tigers are at this point in the season, and again, I talk about the stats not telling the story of the game. LSU was able to really run the football effectively against the defense, as you said, which was one of the, not one of the best Florida rush defenses that we've seen in the Gators football history. But still, you were able to run the ball effectively, but unable to do enough to score. You had I remember at halftime saying that we were approaching 4 yards per carry, which, again, is not fantastic. LSU certainly wants to be able to run the ball much more effective than that, but you almost felt like being able to run for 4.5 yards per carry would, again, keep that Florida defense honest.
Yeah, and look, and when you look at the stats that matter, Durham and Josh Williams both were over 4 yards. Durham was 21 touches for 100, and Josh Williams had 13 touches for 70. So right there, 36 times you rushed the ball, 170 yards. Now, granted, LSU ran 93 offensive plays, but they got the balance that they were looking for. Really liked the adjustment. They went to the pistol formation. A lot of times LSU had a lot of zone read packages. The running back was offset. They went to the pistol. It opened up a couple different runs. I think that Florida wasn't expected. The running wasn't the problem. The rushing, I thought, was obviously a plus and what they wanted to get done. again, just so erratic in the passing game, the 7 sacks, and again, got to be better in the red zone.
I know one of the stories going into the game was obviously DJ Lagway, who suffered a pretty substantial hamstring injury. I mean, you and I talked about it last week after we finished the show. That word was, hey, he's going to practice and it'll be day to day. But we wondered, well, how much can he move with that type of injury based on what we had seen? He was struggling to walk around a little bit in Austin when he was dressed out against Texas. Right. Obviously, he did not play. But he was able to go, but you knew he wasn't going to run. And it was pretty evident pretty early on that he was going to be back there to throw the football, and he was going to hand it off to his running backs. He would not be a part of the running game, and he wasn't the entire night.
Look, the things about Lagway that we didn't know about, I think we found out at the game, and then I had a chance to talk to Florida offensive coordinator Rob Sale afterwards. It's just what an unbelievable kid this is off the field, what a leader he is, and his presence brought that much confidence to this Florida offense that they didn't have a week ago in Austin. That being said, it was the big plays, the big play bug that got at LSU. Ball had the 55-yard touchdown, a couple big passes. Badger had a great game. He had 6 catches, but 36 yards there. DK had 1 for 34. They only ran 42 plays of total offense, just 18 minutes time of possession. But the inefficiency is on offense and the inability to stop the big plays on defense did LSU in.
Yeah, the big play certainly was owned by the Florida Gators. The 2 big pass plays, 1 for a touchdown, 1 set up a touchdown, and then, of course, the 55-yard run that you mentioned that really put the game out of reach late in that fourth quarter. And LSU's longest play through the air was 28 yards. Right. On the ground, a 22-yard gain. Was the biggest play. And again, this is an LSU offense that we got so accustomed to for most of this season with that big play potential. So another reason to go along with what Coach Brian Kelly said after the game, and I'm sure he'll talk about today, the 3 factors in that game was the inability to score in the red zone, and inability to find the end zone all but one time, and then secondly, giving up the big play. But I think the inability to get the big play, whether it's for a touchdown or just to get some momentum, it just never seemed to come to fruition.
Look, I think on the offensive side, we talked about early on these 4 wide receivers were fantastic in the first half of the season. None of them necessarily 4-4 guys. None of them were going to take the top off of the defense, but they were able to get separation with intermediate routes and so forth. And I think what's happened, starting with Texas A&M and certainly the last couple weeks, teams have realized that playing a lot of soft man or some little combination zone coverages where they can play a little bit tighter on LSU's receivers because they're not afraid of them being able to go over the top, right? And that's why LSU tried 3 times to go over the top to Chris Hilton. They were not able to convert. But teams are all copying and pasting what A&M did, and you're getting some sort of soft man or soft zone with man principles. LSU's got to find a way to counter that. And this passing game, which was so lethal early on, in which Garrett Nussmeier, the ball was coming out. He didn't get sacked other than the 2 sacks against South Carolina in the first 6 or 7 football games of the season because the ball was coming out. For me, I think it's taking a step back. How do we simplify things? How are we going to go with a little quicker tempo? And let's simplify, Garrett. We're going to throw to A or B. We're going to get it out of your hands and run something that we can execute.
Well, the Tigers, it was a miserable afternoon and evening in Gainesville, 27-16. Florida gets the win over the Tigers, breaking a 5-game losing streak to LSU. As we mentioned, it'll be Vanderbilt coming up this Saturday. Both teams come in 6-4, 3-3 in SEC play. And coming up, we'll take a break. Then we'll talk about what we know, what Gordy knows about the Commodores this year. But I can assure you it's not your daddy's Vanderbilt, probably not your little brother's or older brother's Vanderbilt this year in 2024. So we'll talk about that as we lead you up to 12 noon. And Brian Kelly taking the podium at Football Operations. Fans, you can bring your best game to game day with Ninja's Wood Fire Grill and Smoker, outdoor pizza oven, and Frost Vault Coolers. Level up your tailgates with Ninja Outdoors. It's a perfect time of year. Got a couple of tailgates left, and, of course, the holidays are coming. So remind yourself about Shark Ninja. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back. It's the Brian Kelly press conference right after this.
There was a time when a person's word was enough. A time when a handshake meant something, and integrity really mattered. For over 70 years, the values of Farm Bureau Insurance have been rooted in hard work, faith, and family. In that time, we've seen the world change in many ways. What hasn't wavered is Farm Bureau Insurance's commitment to protect our customers' way of life and serve the communities in which they live when they need us most. You deserve more. You deserve a promise. Learn more at lafarmbureau.com.
Join the celebration of Great American RV Superstores as we mark our 40th anniversary. Enjoy over 40% off MSRP and upgrade to an RV that fits your lifestyle. Hurry to your nearest Great American RV Superstores or visit greatamericanrv.com. It's time to make the most of our 40 years, and when we celebrate, you save big. Great deals, greater adventures at Great American RV Superstore. Making memories one weekend at a time. 2023 Jayco J Flight 224BA. Stock number 51600 in Heflin. MSRP 40,079. Car savings 21,088. Sales price 18,991 plus tax, title, and license. While supplies last.
The passion, the tradition, the rivalries. Sirius XM is your destination for all things college sports, and we've got you covered. On SEC Radio, there is complete coverage of every school in the conference, including live games, plus 24/7 talk and analysis. So cheer along on the Sirius XM app and listen to your favorite team anywhere. And now you can get 3 months of Sirius XM free. Subscribe now. See all for details at SiriusXM.com/SEC Sports.
Half of the world's population depends on rice for 80% of their daily food needs. By 2050, population growth could increase rice demand by 30%. But as climate changes, rice output is decreasing. At LSU, we're using genetics, genomics, and AI to create new rice that yields more with less resources. We're not just feeding the hungry, we're growing a better future.
Just moments away from the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. Once again, here are Gordy Rush and Chris Blair.
Leading you up to the Brian Kelly Press Conference coming up at 12 noon. The Tigers back at home finish out the regular season over the next 2 weeks. It'll start Saturday night with the Vanderbilt Commodores returning to Baton Rouge for the first time since 2009. Tigers have dropped now 3 straight. They try to turn that around, avoid losing 4 straight for the first time since, I believe, 1999. Does that sound right? I think somewhere in that neighborhood. Again, Vandy coming in 6-4, 3-3. And when you take a look at Vanderbilt this season, of course, the big splash, obviously, was the win over Alabama. And some of us forget that just a couple of weeks before that, they lost on a trip they made to Atlanta to Georgia State. But in every loss outside of South Carolina, Gordy, that they ran into a red-hot Gamecock team their last time out, they had lost their previous games by a total of 10 points. A lot of 3-point losses, a lot of close losses. But Clark Lee's got this team believing, and it starts, of course, with Pavia, the quarterback. He's accounted for 20 offensive touchdowns, 15 through the air, 5 rushing, which is as many as anybody else has for the Vanderbilt team. So it's a dual threat, and again, 15 passing touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. It goes without saying, the quarterback for Vandy has played extremely well, and as he goes, I think the Commodores go.
No, absolutely. And I think that what's different about this Vanderbilt team has not only been Pavia, but he brought with him his former head coach in New Mexico State. Jerry Keel is on staff as an analyst. And then Tim Beck was the offensive coordinator at New Mexico State, a longtime head coach at Pittsburgh State, smaller division school, an innovator on the offensive side of the football. And what really you jump at that quarterback position, and then his favorite target is a tight end that started at Texas A&M, went to New Mexico State, and has been their top receiver. Eli Stowers has come down there. Is they're going to move the pocket. You're going to see a whole lot of eye candy, and you're going to see a quarterback that leads this team and led this team in rushing against South Carolina. And we're familiar with South Carolina. Pavia had 65 yards on the ground. So, again, we go back to the LSU and some of their struggles with Sellers and Reed and certainly Milroe. Vanderbilt's going to get that film, and job number 1 for this LSU defense is the Vanderbilt running game and accounting for Pavia in the run game.
You know, you talk about Pavia, and the numbers bear it out. He is kind of the centerpiece of the offense. Not all that strange for the quarterback to do so, but because he's a dual threat, as you pointed out, there's two things you have to be at least concerned about when he's behind center. But the defense for Vanderbilt, I also think, has been extremely impressive. They've got 12 takeaways, 8 interceptions. They've forced 4 fumbles, and they have scored 51 points off of turnovers. So it's a defense that is opportunistic, and then you combine that with an offense that's had success with Pavia, and that's where you start to get really concerned about what Vanderbilt can do that maybe we haven't been used to for quite a long time.
Yeah, Clark Lee, who is the head coach, is also the defensive coordinator on this team. And it was the story of the Alabama game. They had a pick six to go up early in that football game, made a lot of plays, a lot of turnovers. Alabama, at that point, I think still finding what they were trying to be on offense a little bit, and they had Milroe, in my opinion, a little too much in the pocket. But they're much improved on defense. They're not elite on defense, but they have, as you mentioned, the great plus-minus ratio. When you look back 2 weeks ago, as they were open against South Carolina, Sellers, who's not a big thrower, was 14 of 20 for 238 yards, a lot of big plays in those numbers. And Raheem Sanders was able to rush for 126 yards. So I think there's an opportunity on this side, but it comes back to LSU, and I think it's about LSU getting back on what are they trying to get done on offensively, execute better, and then most importantly, how do they finish off some of these drives when they get in the red zone?
I have to imagine that among the questions today from the press that has assembled, there'll be, obviously, like every week, some talk about injuries and any chance to get anybody back. And I think the focal point right now would be on the offensive line because you had 2 very young players have to take over the majority of the game this past Saturday against, a Florida defense that was not very good against the run, not very good against the pass, and, again, some of that's due to injury. But LSU's offensive line at times really struggled against the Florida defense.
Yeah, what's Miles Frazier's health? He was able to get back into the game. They wrapped up his right ankle. He went back in the game. He was able to finish. I haven't seen the tight cut yet. What percentage? What percentage was he at? What percentage is he going to be at? We've Dellinger. We've heard about that the tightrope surgery. What's the timeline? He was ruled out. Certainly, that would be a huge lift. He's able to come back in the game. And there were a lot of, it was a physical football game. Nussmeier took some shots. Josh Williams was in and out of the tent. Durham walked off the field at one point. So I'm interested to hear the injury report again. Here comes LSU playing a physical game on the road. Got to bounce back to play Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was open. So they're going to come in healthy and fresh into this game.
We touched on it a little bit on the broadcast towards the end after the game had pretty much settled in Gainesville that you got 2 games remaining. With the loss Saturday, you pretty much have taken yourself out of a possibility for a 12-team playoff. And while there was all kinds of optimism of opening it up to 12, it allows teams deeper into the year to still be fighting for something. Not sure what the crowd will be like at Tiger Stadium. Certainly invite fans to come out. I mean, that goes without saying. But you're going to have to create, probably early on, regardless of the crowd, you're going to have to create your energy as a team. And to me, that's the other big challenge for LSU this week.
Yeah, I mean, your last 2 home games have been unbelievable at Ole Miss and Alabama. You're going to have to turn on your own switch if you're a player this week and come up here and make it happen. All
right, Gordy, we'll see you Saturday. Let's go to head coach Brian Kelly.
Outcome. We've had, a few of those that, that certainly don't feel good about anything that you do the next day or the next, opportunity to get before you play again. So, you have to look at everything that you do, examine everything that you do on a day-to-day basis, and make sure that you're addressing those things that are most important to getting the right outcomes. Look, when you don't get the right outcomes, immediately it's going to be, take this action, do this, bench that guy, fire that guy. It's much more about, for us, understanding that we have a process in place. We have to stick with our process. And then maybe are there things that you have to tweak within that? And that's how I've operated for over 34 years. I'm certainly going to feel the pain of our entire state when we're not successful. This is an important position and one where we've got a great following. So you can be assured that every ounce of our energy every minute in the day is focused on how do we get the right outcomes. And that certainly was the case after the Florida game. You know, obviously, we missed some opportunities. You know, clearly you have to score touchdowns in this game. Kicking field goals is not enough. We're not scoring enough points. And we're giving up plays, explosive plays on defense. So if you want to know where the focus is, you know, that is largely the focus, you know, moving forward. There were a lot of positive things, 92 plays on offense and 42 minutes in possession time, 23 first downs. We have a system in place, but it's not turning to what's most important, and that is points at the end of the day. So, again, have to re-examine that. Was pleased that there was a much more balanced running attack. If you take out the negative plays, it was about 186 yards in rushing. That's more to my liking. You know, we had a chance to get our hands on the ball a couple of times on defense. But it came down to a couple of explosive plays. I think it was 3 touchdowns and 11 total plays. So, you know, we know where we have to address, you know, our issues there. You know, again, as we begin now to get ready for Vanderbilt, well acquainted with Clark. He's done a great job of building this program. You know, 6-4 this year with a great win over Alabama, Kentucky, and Auburn. It's a tough and physical defense. They play it in a manner to keep the points down, and I think defensively just do a really good job in terms of balance against the rush and against the pass. You know, obviously, the offensive structure has changed. Diego Pavia leads their team in rushing, completion percentage at 60%. He's a tough, hard-nosed player, and he is the guy that makes it happen for him. Alexander's a really good back. I really love the tight end, Eli Stowers, and Quincy Skinner, a really good wide receiver. So this is a talented football team with a veteran offensive line. Their special teams is outstanding. Their kicker, I think, has got multiple kicks over 50 yards. Love the punt returner, Martell Height. I think he's got about a 17-yard average. And, you know, you've got to defend the running game. It's really triple option in a lot of ways. You know, this is, you know, akin to playing when I was at Notre Dame, Navy and Army, Air Force. And then, you know, there's certainly our players want to finish the right way. You know, we've got 2 games plus a bowl game. We've got 3 games to play. And it's important that we finish out strong, especially in Tiger Stadium. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Brian, you mentioned maybe tweaks to the process. Is there anything that you're going to want to try to do differently, or just how are you going to go about keeping this team together after 3 straight losses here toward the end?
Yeah, those are things that we'll meet on today. You know, Monday's an important day. We get the team back, and so we'll get to talk about some of the things that are important relative to, look, you know, I think we have it up here, motivation. It's your job to motivate you. I mean, our players understand it's their job to motivate, but as coaches, you know, we also have to show them clearly the things that they've done well, right? So they have to be motivated about the things they've done well. As I mentioned, take the Alabama game out of the mix. We had 3 games going late into the third quarter where we have a chance to win those games. Legitimate, not like pie in the sky, well, I think we can win these games. These are games that we believed we could have won and should have won. Well, that puts you at 9-1. You're probably in the top 5 in the country. That team, I can stand here and say, we didn't get the job done. We didn't finish. But this football team is far from not believing that they can do the job and get the job done. So we'll talk about that today. And then when we talk about, you know, tweaking the process, it's about what's important right now for these next 2 weeks, 12 days. What's important right now? And maybe shift their focus a little bit more on some of the things that will help us close out games. That's how we'll move forward today.
Coach, Deshaun Womack, I believe he didn't travel with the team this past week. What's his availability with you guys moving forward?
He'll be available this week.
Brian, in the postgame, you talked about fighters and quitters. How do you identify?
I didn't talk about quitters. I talked about fighting.
Okay.
Yes.
How do you identify the fighters this week? What's it going to take for you to say, that's my guy?
Yeah, I think, when you go out to practice for 2 hours, Mike, you know the guys that are invested, the guys that are bought in, and this football team is bought in. They're disappointed, just like our fan base, just like our coaches. We're all disappointed that we haven't gotten the outcomes that we want. But this is a group that has resilience, that has grit. We've built it in this program, and they'll respond. Now, for those that choose not to, that's their choice. They'll have the autonomy to make those choices. But there's nowhere to hide when you go out on that practice field. You can't hide it, right? You have to put in the effort. You have to put in the time. You have to prepare the right way. And I'm confident in our group in terms of how they'll do that.
We're on the right. After the game, you talked about the head coach needing to get more involved when things aren't going well. Can you walk us through what the process is in game for play calling right now?
Yeah, Joe Sloan will call the plays. They'll certainly be on my headset. And look, like any head coach, he's going to be involved in the ultimate decision of whether that's a go or a no-go. Now, as you know, communication has broadened. That communication includes the quarterback as well. So it can't be this long, conversation about, this play, that play, or it becomes confusing to what he's hearing in his ear. Because the head coach is on that and the play caller, both on defense and offense. So there's only 3 of us that have that with the green dot.
So Garrett can hear you too?
Yes, yeah. I can override that. I choose not to, but it's something that you can do if you wanted to as the head coach. The key here is the ability to make sure that the game is going in the manner that I want it to go in. And at times you have to take that action as a head coach. Not that somebody's being put in the penalty box, but making sure it goes through the vision that I have for that particular game.
Coach, since you arrived, you said that you wanted to build your program through high school recruiting.
Yeah.
Are you seeing where this transfer portal coming up that you're going to need a number that you probably wouldn't like to have to go for? And is that number, you think, going to be that way for years to come?
The transfer portal will not go away. You're absolutely right. And the transfer portal will be something that we have to investigate and look at. I do not want a program that is built, if you will, on the portal. We have to rely on young players. We are playing a lot of young players, as you know, right now. First-year players, those that are here for a very short period of time. We have 19 coming in at mid-semester. So we're still going to be playing some younger players, but there needs to be the right mix and right balance. So the transfer portal will be something that is examined closely, and if we feel like there's a particular need there to balance off our football team, we're certainly going to be invested in that.
Given Paul Mubenga's struggles this past weekend, is Tyree Adams available for more snaps potentially at left guard?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to play the guys that we think give us the best chance, right? I mean, whoever's assessment relative to who played and how they played is really an assessment left to our coaching staff. We'll decide who the best guys are. Tyree was forced into action, as you know, when Miles went down, and he went in and he competed the best he could, given somebody that hadn't played in quite some time. So both of those guys are still going to be in the mix. Both of those guys are still in the phases of, getting early snaps. In other words, in their career, early snaps. So they're still developing, quite frankly. But we're high on both of them. Both of them will be ready to play this weekend.
Hey, I know recruiting tends to be long-term, but do you call your commitments and guys that are close to committing more over the next, now, after a 3-game losing streak than you would, had you won 3 of those or 2 of those? I
would hope that we are calling them as much as if we were winning 3 games as the same as we're losing 3 games. Look, in today's world, with revenue sharing, NIL, transfer portal, all of those things, you have to maintain these relationships throughout the entire year. So whether there's an uptick, whether we've lost a couple of games or not, there should not be. There should be a constant communication with those players, and I think under my watch and understanding what I see every week, because we meet on this 4 times during the week, our guys have done the right things in terms of communication.
It seems like the timing maybe between Chris Hilton and Garrett Nussmeier hasn't quite been there since he's come back, and particularly with the jumping for deep balls.
Yeah.
How do you kind of work with him on those so that he runs through the catch?
Well, you want to do that in practice, and we've had conversations in practice about using your speed and continue to keep your feet on the ground. Look, Chris desperately wants to make plays for us, and he's in that mindset. And I think it's much more about letting the game come to you, and part of that is he's been out so long. And he wants to make an impact. So this is really about a guy that's anxious and wants to make plays and really has to let the game come to him. Matter of fact, that was the conversation we had on the sideline. And understanding that these are the things that we talked about in practice, and they're still showing up in the game. Let the game come to you. And he clearly understood that.
Too, if I can, was there anything that Florida identified on the outside that enabled them to have success, or was that just, a one-on-one opportunity that they got the better of?
Well, I mean, I think you can take a look at the shots. The big touchdown that was the second touchdown, the late one, we were in double coverage. We were doubling inside and out. Zy Alexander and Jordan Gilbert, they were doubling that receiver. We got beat on a double move, a slant and go. With Stamson, we got beat in the slot with PJ. So you got 3 different scenarios there where we got beat in man coverage, and obviously, if you have to look back on it and go, maybe we should have played more zone. But we've got to have the ability to play some man-to-man coverage, and unfortunately, this weekend against Florida, in those 3 instances which I brought up, we did not get the job done.
And secondly, you guys had a successful intermediate passing game early in the season. It doesn't seem to be as prevalent right now. Is there something that you can identify as getting back to, or is it literally just timing and having the opportunity to make those throws?
No, I think teams have decided here's how we want to play you, and we have to be able to push the ball vertically. And that's really what we're addressing and making sure that we do everything in our practice to connect on those. I think you saw 3 balls that were thrown down the field. All 3 we missed on in some fashion. Those balls need to be completed. We need to push the ball because we have defenders that are sitting on all of our routes and making it more difficult than it was earlier in the year.
If I can get 2 about Vanderbilt, you're going to face Diego Pavia, a good running quarterback. Anything you do differently this week? And then also, you mentioned Clark Lee was with you for 4 years at Notre Dame. Could you identify the things then that would make him a good head coach, and maybe just a thought on him sort of persevering after some rough seasons to break through this year?
Yeah, good question. I think, first of all, in terms of defense, I think you have to have a different mindset when you go against this offense. This is truly assignment-oriented football, and you have to be disciplined. Much like what that offense brings you is they want to catch you undisciplined. They want to catch you doing something that's not your job. So the big focus this will be disciplined and getting your job done in all 3 phases, inside, out, and on the perimeter. As it relates to Clark, Clark is extremely locked into what his process is and how he's developed his process. He's stayed steadfast with that, even through some of the rougher years, and that's why they're on the other side of this. They haven't gone for the flavor of the week. This has been a consistent approach as a head coach saying, this is our system, this is our process, this is how we do things, and we're sticking with it, and you can start to see how that's paying off for him today. Absolutely. I mean, that's the way he ran everything. All of our meetings were in lockstep. Everything that we did was in a consensus, which I'm certain he's getting that same consensus within his program at Vanderbilt.
referenced that conversation with Chris on the field. Do your office hours get extended in tough times? Is your open door even more open? And how do you handle communication with the athletes?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, as I said earlier, there's nobody here in this building that's happy about where we are and what the outcomes are. Essentially, what you're doing more than anything else is getting the autonomy or the feedback from your players, because they're stakeholders in this as well, and so you want to hear what they have to say. What are the things that we need to stop doing? What are the things that we need to start doing? What are the things that we need to do more of? And so we're always asking those things from our players and getting that kind of feedback. So, yeah, your door better be open. It better be a revolving door, especially in times like this that are rough. They're hard on anybody that follows LSU football. They're hard on the head coach and the assistant coaches and the players and the guy that sweeps out here and cleans up in this building, the janitors. Everybody's affected when LSU football loses, and players obviously even more so.
In that game against Alabama that Vanderbilt had, what allowed them to be so effective in moving the ball so consistently in that game?
I think it was just a disciplined approach to what they were doing, play in and play out. I think it's like anything else. Would Alabama made some adjustments now that they have gone through that? I think probably. They've grown from that. But I will say that their consistent approach, they didn't go away from it. They were not afraid to continue to do what they were doing, punt the football, play field position, and then be opportunistic defensively. They did a great job defensively in that game, and that sometimes gets overlooked how well they played in that game defensively.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned eliminating the big plays after this loss to Florida, and I believe that after the game, Witt said that on Florida's last touchdown, the defense was running two different things. Is it surprising that kind of thing's happening at this point in the season, and how do you go about fixing that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm disappointed that certainly there was a feeling that there were some mixed calls or signals out there. I think one of the big things that we've learned in this new era of communication in the headset for the players is there needs to be one voice. One voice. Even if you have the green dot, the one voice needs to be consistent and constant. And maybe that occurred. We're trying to get to the end of that too, and what happened there. But clearly, that's on us as coaches. We have to make sure that there's clear communication and that there's no mixed messages relative to what's being called. We have a guy on the sideline who's signaling everything in. That hasn't changed. We haven't stopped signaling. So there's no reason why you can't get the signal. But if you hear something, we then have to address what is that collateral sound out there that they're hearing that would not put them in the right call. So we have to take onus on that. We have to make sure that that never happens again.
With Garrett, I know there was the one fumble there in the second half, but considering the pressure he was facing most of the game, were you pleased with his decision-making and just kind of it looked like he threw the ball away several times when nothing was there? I mean, just maybe talk about maybe the one-game growth you might have seen in that department.
I thought he was extremely intentional about his actions, in terms of taking care of the football. And he would say that to me coming off the field. Maybe I could have done this, but I was very intentional about making sure we took great care of the football. Look, he is in the midst of this continuous improvement in the pocket, and I think he's doing a really nice job. There's room for growth there, and the great part about it is he's up for it. He wants to get better in this first year of being a starter, and I'm excited about coaching him. I know everybody that is with Garrett has a guy that is totally committed to being better and better each week.
Update on your offensive lineman. Is Dellinger going to be available to practice this week, and is Miles also?
Yeah, we believe that Miles will be able to practice this week. Dellinger will still be where do we think he is early in the week to make a decision later in the week. We're getting closer. We're getting closer where we think there's a chance that he could play, but we won't make that decision until probably midweek.
And then with Diego, their quarterback, just so much of his game seems to be talent, sure, but willingness, heart, desire. Mm-hmm. Those are things that you have to, take into account for, I'm sure, when you're preparing for a quarterback like that. what can you emphasize about your team that the play is probably never over?
Well, again, I think you have to be able to match, the want and desire of any opponent that we play in this league with the same want and desire. I am pleased with my football team's want and desire. They have prepared very well. The one thing that we've done well is we've prepared. As I mentioned to you, 3 games going late into the third quarter where we have a chance to win. And that's not, as I said, that's not just trying to put a good spin on it. So their preparation's pretty good, their want to and their desire to play hard. Now we have to execute when execution is needed at its highest level. And that falls on both of us, players and coaches alike, to get our players in the position so they can be successful and close out football games. But I really do believe that our preparation and our want to is going to match a guy like Diego, who has a great desire to play.
Devon Key's got a lot of playing time in this game, and it looked like y'all went back to that 4-3 base at times. Is that something you want to continue to do moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's a game-to-game, Wilson, depending on who we're playing, the opponent, what it looks like. This weekend, obviously, we're in a more of an option look, and we'll see how that fits. But we were pleased with Devon in terms of what he did, being asked to be involved in the game the way he was. We were pleased with what he did for us when he was given that opportunity.
Coach, I know you're going to evaluate everything once the season is over with across the board, but do you have any questions in your own mind about maybe the strength and power of this team? And there's a lot of new age techniques. Do you think maybe some of that's getting away from the core lifts and stuff that's done in the offseason?
No, I have no problem with our strength and conditioning program. It's one that I've run for a long time. Matter of fact, I think we bring in the science as well as anybody in the country. I think Alabama, their head strength coach was on my staff. We share a lot of the data. We share a lot of the work that we do. We just came through our final phase of testing here in the 1st of November, which we call our peak phase. And guys made incredible improvements. A guy like DJ Chester is 142% of his averages. That's how high he has increased his strength throughout the season. So we actually have a way of looking at that data. Instead of saying, well, I think he's stronger, or well, he looks stronger, we have data that will allow us to say, you know what, your peak numbers are down. And let's look at the reasons why. Is this effort? Is this injury? And some of it is sometimes, like, for example, we have a speed squat that we do. Miles is down a little bit. He's about 92% of his max. But he's had this ankle, right? So he couldn't be as explosive, during those testing periods. So we're pretty exhaustive in the sports science division here. We think we send a really good message and a trend out there that we have that data that we can build our football team on.
You guys showed some real improvement in the running game this past week. What were some of the things that you guys were doing better in the run game, especially in that one drive, early third quarter, where I think it just stalled out in the red zone, but it was a very impressive drive? Commitment
to running the football in all downs and distances. As you know, this is the first time we've run it on first, second, third, and fourth down all year. So every down, a commitment to the run game, and mixing it up. We were outside zone to one side, we were counter back the other side, we were toss, we were split zone. We had some reverses and some handoff sweeps, largely not as effective as we would have liked in the fourth down situation. But I think versatility to the run game and commitment to it, and then the play action off of it, is absolutely crucial as well. Those elements were in play, and they need to continue to be in play. All right. Thank you. You're welcome.
Head coach Brian Kelly with this week's press conference as the Tigers get ready to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores. Again, 6:45, but actually going to be 6:55 kicking it off between the Commodores and Tigers on a Saturday night in Death Valley. Just as Coach Kelly took the podium, the SEC from Birmingham announced that LSU and Oklahoma, the regular season finale, will kick off just after 6 o'clock a week from this Saturday. Once again, back inside Tiger Stadium. We'll take our final time out, come back with some program notes right after this.
NIL is dominating the college sports scene, and LSU has positioned itself at the front of the pack. But to remain competitive and stay ahead of the rest, we need your support. Bayou Traditions is the official NIL collective of LSU Athletics. Join the tradition and become a member by signing up online at BayouTraditionsCollective.com. Members receive exclusive access to LSU student athletes that you can't get anywhere else. Help ensure LSU remains a leader in the NIL arena. Sign up today at BayouTraditionsCollective.com.
There was a time when a person's word was enough, a time when a handshake meant something, and integrity really mattered. For over 70 years, the values of Farm Bureau Insurance have been rooted in hard work, faith, and family. In that time, we've seen the world change in many ways. What hasn't wavered is Farm Bureau Insurance's commitment to protect our customers' way of life and serve the communities in which they live when they need us most. You deserve more. You deserve a promise. Learn more at lafarmbureau.com.
There's danger out there. It lurks on highways and quiet neighborhood streets. It's more likely to kill you than a shark and more terrifying than the biggest snake. Distracted driving claims lives every day. Every notification, swipe, social post, video, or selfie while driving risks your life. So while you might think public speaking or the zombie apocalypse is scary, what's really terrifying and even deadly is distracted driving. Eyes forward. Don't drive distracted. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
The Southeastern Conference. It's the land of legends, the places, the faces, and moments.
And he's going for it. It's a touchdown!
We've seen the confetti fall again and again. We're not done. It's time for the next generation to make their mark and go from 14 deep to 16 strong. It's a whole new ball game in the SEC, and it just means more.
Wrapping up this week's Brian Kelly press conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation, with some final thoughts and programming notes. Here again is Chris Blair.
LSU and Vanderbilt get together on Saturday night inside Tiger Stadium. Both teams 6-4 on the year, both teams 3-3 in league play. They'll kick it off at 6:55 Central Time. Hope to see you there in the stadium. And, of course, later this week, we'll have the Brian Kelly Show live from TJ Ribs, 7 o'clock on Thursday night. Hope you'll join us at TJ Ribs. If not, you can catch the action all live on the LSU Sports Radio Network across the state of Louisiana and, of course, streaming worldwide on the LSU Sports mobile app. Again, SEC announced the final home game, final regular season game of 2024. LSU and Oklahoma at Tiger Stadium will have a 6 o'clock Central kickoff time. Thanks to Gordy Rush. Thanks to you for joining us. Be back next Monday for the Brian Kelly press conference.
This has been the Brian Kelly press conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. For the very latest on the Tigers, follow LSU football on X, Facebook, Instagram, and anytime at lsusports.net. The LSU Sports Radio Network, a division of LSU SP and Playfly Sports.